Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 7 of The Familiar of Zero, Night of the Twin Moons. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Queen Henrietta, along with Saito and Louise and others, managed to catch some people who were up to some nefarious stuff, and in so doing, I guess they've sort of stabilized their position for now. However, it seems like things are destabilizing in other ways, Germania is gearing up for war with Albion. Princess Henrietta's cabinet has unanimously voted on heading off to war, so it's up to her to formally declare it. It is interesting that Henrietta's in a position where a cardinal's saying, look, you probably gotta do this. Because, they do seem to be generally peace-loving, peace-seeking people. Although I guess the Cardinal is smart enough to say that, look, there could be a coup over this. Well, wait a minute. He's saying the worst that could happen is you'd be put in jail. That's not true at all. The worst that could happen to Henrietta is that she gets, guillotined or something. Jail's probably the best she could hope for if there were a coup. But, I guess, the big point here is that this really demonstrates that Henrietta's not a Machiavellian leader here, Because she's sort of so ideologically opposed to war that she's not considering that other people might, create an even worse war in her absence. Therefore, in order to minimize bloodshed, it might be better to act now. Although I guess, it seems like she has been swayed by their arguments, which is to her credit. Now, normally during the opening theme, I would sit quietly with reverence, but today I am obligated to my sponsor. Today's sponsor is none other than myself. You may not know this, but I write light novels, and I've written quite a few. Today, I'm going to tell you about the eccentric detective Yamamoto, in which the intrepid, if drunken detective solves a wide variety of cases with the help of her assistant Satoshi. Ranging from finding missing pets and surveilling cheating spouses to catching a high-end cat burglar and preventing the murder of a local business magnate, no case is too big or too small for Detective Yamamoto. Even when she's forced to work with, and occasionally against, the police, and even when she must contend with her fear of the supernatural, nothing will prevent the eccentric detective from doing what needs to be done to solve the case. If this sounds like something you'd like to read, then by all means, consider purchasing books in the Eccentric Detective Yamamoto series by me, Frederick Fitzgerald, through Amazon. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the episode. So this is something, an underground secret document. I seem to recall that nobleman that Agnes slew had mentioned something about secret underground passages and how, there might be something interesting in this little subterranean space, but I guess more to the point on the topic of war, one has to wonder here, is Queen Henrietta going to be leading from the front? Because she seemed to be sort of leaning towards that in the little skirmishes that had occurred before. But at the same time, that's not exactly a practical thing for the Queen to be doing, especially in this sort of late stage of history. It's not exactly the Crusades with Richard the Lionheart or anything like that. And I guess, Louise has the right idea here that, really, Albion launched the war, declaring war in turn, that's really the only thing you can do. Whether you want to or not doesn't really factor into it. Oh. Okay, so up till this point, we've seen technology, mainly military equipment, in this world from Saito's, but now we have a sailor uniform, or at least part of it. Now, naturally, Saito, he enjoys the sight of it, shall we say. But the question is, what sort of a problem is going to arise from this? He's sort of hesitant to have Louise wear it initially because, it might look better on someone else, which, it's not a good thing to be saying. I guess the question is, who's going to cause the problem? There will be one, but is it Siesta, or will it be Queen Henrietta, or will it be, I don't know, Kirsch? She hasn't been causing trouble lately. So it seems like there was truly a secret document vault, but beyond that, Agnes has been granted access. Ooh. Alright, so there's a couple layers of bureaucracy here. Henrietta says, Agnes, yeah, you can go in there, but Osmond says, I haven't received authorization to open the lock, so, I don't know. It seems like this might be the pretense to, sort of violating the spirit of the rules and sort of breaking in, but the question is, to what end is all this? I get the feeling that Agnes is more concerned about, her village and the incident that occurred with it, but it strikes me that this is something of a selfish thing, really, because, she already killed the nobleman that was ostensibly behind it, but he wasn't the guy that was there in person burning things, so I don't know, surely Agnes wouldn't go through and hunt down every single soldier that took part, right? I could get doing that, but at the same time, some people are only following orders, and therefore, you can't be too terribly angry at them. Well, you can be, but it's not necessarily reasonable. Now, regarding the magic lock, Louise might be able to dispel it with void magic, although it kind of remains to be seen, It seems that she doesn't exactly have the right temperament. Oh dear. So, Saito has approached Siesta and said, here, you wear this, and, in a sense, it is a good call on his part. It does look good, but on the other hand, I don't know, it certainly doesn't fit with the times, and it's probably going to cause severe consternation on Louise's part. I mean, if she were to blow him up, I think it would probably be deserved, because, when you get down to it, shouldn't he be having Louise wear it, regardless of whether or not it suits her? Or, even if you think it doesn't suit her, maybe you should, keep that to yourself, Ooh. So this is something. Louise is saying it might be better to just, burn all these documents rather than hide them down here, but it seems like it's a matter of governmental policy. Now, the interesting thing here is that Louise's elder sister is showing up to help here. I guess she is something of a relative authority on locks, and magical ones at that, but well, I take that back, never mind. She busted the door right down. But I guess it's kind of interesting that she's not really berating Louise like she had done before. Maybe it's more that there's stuff going on here, important business, so she doesn't really have the time to berate her sister, but I don't know. I guess it's sort of like when Louise gets her mind set on something and therefore she neglects whipping Saito. Whoop. So it seems like they've been caught. Now, Colbert here, he's not exactly in charge of guarding this place, but, he does know the principal was against all this. I do find it interesting that Agnes is bringing up the fact that he's a coward again, indicating that he wasn't willing to fight in the war. I mean, that's sort of a complicated thing, because he strikes me as more of a conscientious objector. But, given the advanced Norwood he's got going on, I reckon he's gotta be, kind of old, And I suppose in medieval war, they, didn't necessarily care about how old you might have been. If you had to fight, you had to fight. And that's really the end of it. But, oh dear. Colbert's asking some interesting questions. And while there might be interesting answers to it, I fear we're not going to get them now because, the group isn't alone down here, probably to their detriment. This is supposedly a repository of, like, government documents, which is, always a good thing to begin with, but whether it's someone else intruding or if it's a, monster, like a guardian, well, it's not a monster, but it is something bad. So, unfortunately, Siesta showed up in that sailor uniform and she spilled the beans like, "Look, Saito, you gave me these clothes, I'm trying them on, how do I look?" And if Saito had been thinking, he might deny this or otherwise, like, guard his reaction, but, unfortunately, his unguarded reaction is likely to provoke ire. Oh, dear. So it seems like everyone's talking unguardedly here, that, this clothing is similar to what, Saito knew in his home country. Oh, dear. For Siesta to suddenly, like, cover her mouth in shock at what she just said, like, I feel like she did that on purpose, That really seems like it wasn't an accident. It is sort of telling that Louise would rather, like, cave in the ceiling on all of them than, like, directly blow up Siesta, which, she would probably be within her rights to. Oh, dear. That was probably, like, the one way in and out, too. Just to make everything majorly inconvenient for everyone. Oh, dear, indeed. So, I guess the question is, if that was the one way in and out of this place, then, how are they gonna get out, Like, surely there has to be, like, something else. I'd imagine a giant underground repository like this would probably have, like, some form of ventilation, and, maybe you could use that to leave, but, yeah, there really is no turning back, so everyone's just gonna have to delve deeper into this little labyrinth. Oh, dear. So, Saito didn't learn his lesson, he's still just stealing glances at Siesta, and really, he should probably just knock it off. Although, unfortunately, he's sort of like, informing everyone of the intricacies of the uniform. Yeah, it's called a sailor uniform, but, like, it's not really worn by people in the Navy anymore. Ooh. So this is something, I think it is fair to say that Colbert is a conscientious objector. It seems that he's not afraid of war per se, but that, he doesn't like what it does. And understandably so. Being a teacher at this school, like, the entire male student population's been drafted, so, things are decidedly not good. Now, it is interesting that he says he hasn't seen battle, because normally one would think that such an aversion to war would come from first-hand experience. Ooh. I'm wondering if there's a bit of a shared history here. Because, if these are fire mages, and Colbert, I believe, had displayed fire magic before, then, I don't know, maybe he was involved, and I guess that perhaps provokes his attitudes, for want of a better term. Granted, what we've learned from Agnes, this isn't exactly a war, this is really just a massacre, Like, there weren't battle lines drawn up and, tactics engaged, and this was just like a village being razed to the ground. Okay, yeah, so Agnes is just confirming it, that, like, this hunt for records is entirely self-serving. She wants to know who burned down the village so she can mete out justice. But, boy, it's gonna get real awkward if Colbert's on that list. Now this is something, they've found the archive, I guess, but it is interesting that it appears to be open to daylight, which, for like a big secret archive, I feel like it should be sort of entirely enclosed. Maybe there is no good way to get to the archive through the ceiling, but at the same time, you wouldn't want to leave it to chance. Alright, good on Agnes, she's sort of made the decision to split up Saito and Siesta, so I feel like Louise should thank her for that, if only slightly. Oh dear. So Colbert's asking questions he doesn't want to know the answers to. What are you gonna do when you find out who was responsible for burning the village? She's like, well, I'm gonna kill him. That really seems like, a real conspicuous question, It's like, I'm asking for a friend here, but what are you gonna do to those people when you find them? Now, I'm not sure I get where he's going with this line of reasoning. It's like, have you ever fallen in love? There's more to life than just revenge and war and all that. And I guess he is right, but, oh dear. Unfortunately, Louise will continue to suffer after the events of the previous episode. For their rumors about which team Agnes is playing for, I feel like that makes it that much worse for Louise. Oh dear, indeed. So, tellingly, at the archive, there's a big warning. And I can't help but wonder if it's a warning or if it's something a bit more than that, it's saying look, don't alter, remove, or destroy documents, don't use magic. And it says if you do any of that stuff, you will be met with catastrophe. So is it booby-trapped, really? Because I could easily see it come to pass that Saito does something, Louise blows him up, and invites trouble for everyone. It's practically something that writes itself here, knowing how the Familiar of Zero often goes. Oh dear. So Saito's just sticking his oar in where it don't belong, asking Colbert about what he thinks of Agnes and, why he's continually glancing at her. I feel like it's probably because he knows he's guilty and is trying to, sort of, maybe kind of atone. But, man. Unfortunately, I think things are probably going to get worse before they get better. Oh, here we go. So it wasn't Louise who used magic, it was her sister, and, I guess the second interpretation was correct. There is a security system that will respond violently to magic, so, boy howdy. As much as Louise's sister really rags on her, it seems like, she's probably done, the worst thing thus far. Louise hasn't, screwed the pooch in this manner. So yeah, here we go. Even as the walls are closing in, Agnes is staying behind to read and try and figure out the key information she needs. But, oh no, that's something. The Force was sent to, handle an epidemic. At least officially. Whether or not that was actually true, we don't know. For certain, anyways. But, unfortunately for Agnes, it seems like the answer's not ultimately going to be forthcoming. Part of the record was, torn out, so... she's sort of unwilling to leave until she actually gets the answer she wants, but... Given that, her ankle was injured by a falling book, and it seems like the bridge is crumbling and this whole place might be collapsing... someone's gonna have to do something drastic to get them all out of here alive. I mean, good on Colbert at least, carrying her. That's no small thing, especially when you're, running over a bridge mid-collapse. I mean, for a guy who is ostensibly a bookworm, this is, a pretty impressive feat of strength, I would imagine. And, unfortunately, this sort of similar position has provoked a memory. Agnes, even if she doesn't know who the captain responsible for the burning of her village was, she might now have her suspicions about who else was involved. And, they were kind of laying it on thick here, but it seems like Colbert was involved, and, this isn't the first time he saved Agnes. So, yeah, it does seem like he is kind of putting on an act here. Everyone's saying, like, wow, Colbert, you were brave and decisive and strong. What's the deal with that? And he's like, oh, I was just scared and running. Which may well be true, but I feel it doesn't tell the full story. So I guess Colbert's going back to that whole business about, like, maybe forgiving the soldiers just because, it seemed like no one really knew the true story. And I guess that does make sense, if there was a good reason for burning the village, or if the soldiers themselves were deceived into doing it, then, you can be mad at them, but I feel like you can't credibly kill them over that, Oh dear. So unfortunately, everyone has decided that the only way to clear the blockage is to incense Louise to the point where she blows everything up. And I get that desperate times might call for desperate measures, but surely you could just ask her to do that, right? Like, you don't have to strain the relationship further by flirting with Siesta. Oh dear. Truly, the suffering will continue until morale improves. Man, it's bad when you can hear the sound of the explosion, like, above ground in the academy. Like, it's bad. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.